Hello, scale modeling world, and welcome to YouTube's Scale Modeling channel. This evening, we're going to present the final part of building and detailing the Revell-Monogram 148 scale B-29. And in this final part, which is part 11, I'm going to show you how I did my decaling. I'm going to do a little bit of sponging with some silver paint in order to hide some minor flaws that I discovered after all my airbrushing was complete. And then we're going to do the final assembly. So there's a mixture here again, just like in part 10, of video and some still photography with some overlay narration. So let's get started. The lady and boomerang were one very large decal, so I cut it into 3 sections to make it easier to install and lessen the chance of any silvering. On large numbers or letters, especially ones that have clear film on the inside areas, I cut out all of the clear film from inside as well as around the decal so that there's no chance of any silvering. I also do the same thing on national insignia. I get rid of as much of the clear film as possible. This model is so big, I decided not to give it an entire coat of clear gloss, instead just glossing the areas where the decals go. I've got the decals installed on the propeller blades, and they came out pretty good. So now they are ready for a coat of Tester's dull coat, and then they can be glued onto the beautiful Resin 2 detailed 3D printed engines. So yeah, we're done. These decals, these are not the kit decals. The decal sheet was so old because my kit was bought almost 40 years ago. The only thing I was able to use was the national insignia, and I cut around the insignia so that the clear white film wouldn't go milky on me. That's what happens sometimes when decals get old. The clear film, even though you put it on a gloss finish, the clear film gets milky and it ruins the appearance of the decal. So I found these on eBay, and they're Tecmos from Poland, and comes with a nice instruction sheet, and these are the decals. The clear film is individual to each one of these decals, which is really nice. And I think the Hamilton Standard logos are a little bit too small, but they came out pretty good. They should be a little bit bigger, but I can go with that. I tried these, I purchased these other decals. These are from Germany, and I think these 148, this is 132nd, 148th, and 172nd. I think the 48s are too big. And the lettering that goes on the inside area of the blade right here is supposed to be yellow, and they printed them in white. So I decided not to use these. I thought maybe I could use the logos, but the Hamilton Standard prop logos, but the problem you have is there's clear film is one continuous sheet. And so you have to cut out around each one of these decals to get rid of as much of the clear film as you can. Whereas on these, the clear film is probably maybe, you know, a 1/64th of an inch around each individual decal, which is really nice. So I chose to use these. So now we just need to go ahead and give them a coat of clear flat so that they'll look like the underside. And then we can see that's flat black. That's gloss black. And put them on there, and that'll be it. The model will be finished. I've got the probs completely covered with Tester's dull coat, and came out pretty darn good. I really like these decals. I just wish the insignia was just a tiny bit bigger, but looks great. Here's the other two. Looks really good. I got to tell you, I really like this stuff. I'm glad that Testors, or Rust-Oleum, that bought Testors years ago, still produces this stuff, because I got to tell you, it works great. So let's go ahead and get them installed and take some finished shots. I've got all the decaling done, and the surface has been given a coat of Testors Dull Coat to seal the decals. And before I did the Testors Dull Coat, I did do a tiny bit of sponging, but came out pretty good, much better than I thought. And the forward canopy looks pretty good. So let me see if I can pick this up and show you. Models usually have a good side and a not so good side. This is the good side. This side where that decal in is almost as good as this side, but and I've got a little bit of dust on the inside of the canopy. Not much I can do about it now. But here's the one side of the canopy. I had some minor flaws here, and I hit it with a little bit of sponging, with silver paint. And here's the other side. And I've got some still photography that I'm going to show you after this. But here's the wings. This is a really big model, and it's really, really difficult to move around. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and show you the demarcation lines on the underside between the colors. And it came out pretty good. So I'll put up the still photography right after this, but yeah, it looks pretty good. Now, the decals for the olive drab B-29s were pretty old, and so I had a little bit of silvering on this side here, and I hit it with some sponging, and this side came out much better. So, and that up top here, this I'll be able to do a little bit of a touch up at some point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and turn it over so that I can do the exhausts first, and then I'll do the underside after the exhausts are on, and I'll be able to work my way to get it all done on the underside, flip it over, and then I can work on the top. So once I get the underside done, I'll show you what that looks like. But I'm really pleased. So far it's looking pretty good. This is the biggest model I've built in 1/48 scale. I mean, this B-29 is audacious in size, and it dwarfs the B-17. So when I do the intro, I'll do the B-29 next to the B-17 just to show you the difference in size. But yeah, came out pretty good so far. So like I said, I gotta flip this and brace it from the underside, and then I can work on those exhausts and go from there. So far so good. Of course, I keep saying that in every video, so far so good. And so far I haven't dropped it. I almost dropped this once. Thank God, because that would have really been a bad day. But yeah, I'll show you what the exhausts look like once I get them painted. Since the front of the engine nacelles always show worn paint because of the propellers, I sponged those areas with just a little bit of silver paint. There was a tiny ridge where I had done some sanding with a surgical sanding stick, and to hide that, I just sponged the area to trick the eye and prevent you seeing it. There were also some small flaws on the other side of the fuselage by the cockpit, and here again, I hid them with a little bit of sponging. Every now and then you have a decal disaster, and I had one on the national insignia on the underside of the wing. And to hide the flaws associated with that, I did some sponging, although you can still see it a little bit. I've got the landing gear all installed, and as well as the actuator doors for the bomb bays as well as the landing gear doors, and came out pretty good. So on this one, on this side, I installed this first, glued it in place, then installed this actuator for the doors, which has that pin in it that this sits on, and then you can get this piece installed next, and then the piece back here. So yeah, came out pretty good. Now on this side, what I discovered was that, and I don't know if it's because of the positioning of the landing gear, but this pin was too long. And so what I did was I cut this off, positioned this one, glued it in place, and then carefully glued this back on, and then filled this area right here with some white glue so that it looked like a continuing piece. So that worked real well. And the second set of mufflers that I put in worked really, really good. They're not all exactly the same, but they're close. So that worked really well. So now got two mufflers, which is what the B-29 had, although this one is not exactly accurate, but not much you can do about it with the kit. With the forward landing gear, it sat a little cocked to this side, which is the port side. So what I did was I sanded a little bit of the pin on this side and was able to move it over a little bit, and then glue this actuator in place. So that worked real well. And now on the back, let me move this around a little bit. Man, this is a big model. All right, on this back piece, you have the two pieces here. So what I did was, there's pins on both sides of this piece here. There's pins on this one, and I used Tester's glue, put a little bit in the positioning holes, and then installed this piece, then put a little bit of Tester's glue on both sides on the inside and installed this piece, and then carefully positioned them in place. So that worked real well. So these pieces were also glued in place with some Tester's, tiny drops of Tester's glue on the landing gear, but before I installed the landing gear, I scraped the paint off so that I got a good bond on both sides of the plastic. So that worked real well. And I apologize for how I'm having to do this, but that's the best I can do because this model is so big, it's hard to handle. You know, and I don't want to break anything. So what I need to do now is install, there's a piece that goes here, and that's for the door actuators for the landing gear doors for the forward landing gear bay. And what I discovered was the piece that goes here was a little bit too wide, so I cut off the pins and sanded it down a little bit. So once I get it installed, I'll show you what that looks like. But yeah, you need to make sure that these pins and these pins for the bomb bay door actuators are set correctly so that the end of this pin fits inside the cup that was molded into the inside of the fuselage on the bomb bay doors as well as the landing gear doors. So once I get all this installed, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But what I'm going to do now is go ahead and glue the tires on, and then I'll be able to flip it over, and I'm going to put the elevators, I'm going to glue the elevators on the back here, and the glass piece that goes on the back side of the rear gunner station. And then I'll show you what that looks like. So we are making progress. I'm going to get it all together. Of course, this is a final assembly sequence, so I also need to put the 2 turrets on the bottom and all the doors. And the last thing I'll do is the engines and the cowlings. And these little pins here that I created so that the engine cowlings have a good attachment point, that was a really good solution to the problem of not having any attachment point for the engine cowlings, the way the designers did the work on this model. So, but coming along pretty good, and we're making slow but steady progress, and that's okay. So let's go ahead and get the tires on and get them positioned properly, glued in place, and then I'll show you what that looks like. I got all the wheels glued on, and they came out pretty good. And unfortunately, picking this up really isn't going to show you much more, but there's the front wheels right there. Got those installed, and both sets of back wheels. And the way I did it was the wheels fit on the axles pretty tightly on all 3 landing gears. And so I slipped them on and then flipped the airplane over. Well, before I did that, I made sure that the flat side was basically as much to the bottom as I could get it, and flipped it over on its tricycle landing gear. And then the 2 outer ones needed a slight adjustments. The 2 inner ones were perfect on the flat side of the tires, but the outer ones I had to kind of get my hand under there and just make minor adjustments. And of course it was a little bit easier with the front tire because it's easy to get to. So, and then once I got everything adjusted correctly, I carefully picked it up, turned it over, back again, and then using this thin wire applicator here, and here's my cardboard with the puddles of super glue. Of course it doesn't have any now, so I just dipped it here, and then just carefully, just at the attachment point right there on the axle to the tire. And it's really important to go ahead and get the paint off of the axles so that you get a good bond. And because these are resin, super glue is an instantaneous bond. Even the slow set super glue, it's instantaneous bond with resin. So that's all it took, was a tiny drop on each one of those. And I put several drops in each one, on each axle to tire location. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and on the back of the aircraft, I'm going to go ahead and put the elevators on, as well as that rear glass piece for the aft cockpit gunner's location. And then I'll flip it back over again, and then on its underside, and then put all the gear doors on place. And then the turrets, and that'll be it for the bottom, and I can flip it over on its tricycle landing gear, work on the top. So we're getting real close. And then I just need to install the motors, the cowlings, and the propellers. So we are almost done. I got the elevators installed, and the way I did it was I put tiny drops of super glue on the inside of the hinge areas here, and then slid it into place. Because when I cut it out and fixed it, I made it a tight fit so that the control surfaces wouldn't just fall out, and so I wouldn't have to hold them in place until the glue dried. So using white glue works really, really well for these type of applications. So again, a little bit of white glue on the inside of each hinge, and when you slide it in place, it pushes the glue on the inside of the holes that are on the inside of the hinge openings. So and that prevented any glue from leaking out. So yeah, it came out pretty good. So and I've got this rear glass installed. Doesn't fit very well, and the white glue is still drying. And I try to put white glue along the seam lines where there was a void. So yeah, it came out okay, but not real happy with it. I've got all the doors on the underside installed, and they came out pretty good. So how I did it, I put drops of white glue on the insert areas, better on this side, the little openings here, right here and here, with some white glue, position the door, and then put a drop of medium set super glue right here so that it would hold it in place. And that worked real well. So I did that on the forward doors and the aft doors, and I used that same procedure for the landing gear bay doors on the main wheel struts. Now on this piece here, the forward landing gear, the door actuator doesn't sit correctly inside of the landing gear bay opening. So what I did was I cut the positioning tabs and then pushed it down and kind of form fitted it into place, and it worked really well. Once I did that, then I was able to use the same process. The openings where the hinges were, I put tiny drops of white glue, and then once I got that positioned in place, I hit it with some medium set super glue right there. So it's all done. All of that's done, and it came out pretty good. So now, the only thing I have left on the underside, there's a pitot tube that goes here, and there's two on this side. And as I showed you in an earlier video, I've got positioning pins set up on the inside here, so I just need to drill those holes. But I'll go ahead and do the turrets first, and then the last thing I'll do is the pitot tubes. Flip it over and finish the top. So I get all that done, and then I'll work on the engines and the cowlings, and then put the props on last. So we're making really good progress here. I got the pitot tubes installed on the fuselage, and I used a .0225 inch drill bit, which is pretty tiny, and used my pin vise here to set a pilot hole in these locations that Monogram provided you. There's very, very shallow ovals. You got to look for them really, really well. So now, because there's a .020 inch pin on here, it will go right in place, just like that. So now what I'll do is I'll pull it out, and I'll put a tiny drop of white glue in that location and push it back down, and just let it dry. So we're good to go. And this worked really, really well. I do this on all my kits. I try to make them as strong as possible. So after these are done, I just need to do the two bottom turrets, and the entire bottom will be done, and then I can flip it over and start working on the top. So yeah, it's looking good. And I'm glad I took the time to do these pins, because if you don't do the pins, then what you have to do is hold it in that location, and it's really, really fragile, and it'll come off on you if you're not careful. But now with the pin in place, it's much stronger. So we'll go ahead and get the gluing done, and then move on to the turrets. I've got the bottom turrets done, and they came out pretty good. So how I did it was I put tiny drops of white glue in the holes, inserted the barrels, got them positioned correctly, and then just let the white glue dry. Once that happened, then I hit it with tiny drops of super glue on the sides, and when that was dry, then I used Tester's Dull Coat, tiny drops of Tester's Dull Coat over the super glue, and it makes the super glue disappear. Don't ask me how it works, but it works. And here's the other one. So yeah, came out pretty good. Very pleased. So now I just need to glue them on, and I'll use white glue to glue them on. And then once it dries, I can flip them over. The bottom of the aircraft is done. I've got the guns installed, and pitot tubes came out really good. And so now I need to turn it over. Here's the aft gun. And so everything is done on the bottom. I just need to go ahead and turn it over, and I can work on the top. And then the last thing is the engines and the propellers. So we are almost there. And I'm really pleased. It turned out much better than I thought it would. Here's some close-up still photography of the completed underside of this big model. And I gotta tell you, it turned out pretty good. With the underside complete, it was time to flip over the model, install the engines, and then the cowlings. The engines were attached with tiny drops of Tester's glue, and then the cowlings were positioned so that I could then properly position the engines on each cowling. The tiny positioning tabs that I added for the engine cowlings really made a big difference in being able to easily glue into place and position the engine cowlings. I then added the upper gun turrets and all of the antennas on the top of the fuselage, and adding those pins really made a big difference on being able to properly position everything. With the propellers installed, the model is now complete. So let's take a look at some finish shots of this big, beautiful model. Hello everybody, thanks for watching part 11 of our multi-part series on building and detailing the Revell-Monogram 1/48 scale B-29. And you know, this 11-part series, some of the videos were pretty long, but I present a lot of techniques and a lot of ways for you to improve your modeling skills. And I gotta tell you, I took a quantum leap forward when I discovered using an air tank instead of a compressor for airbrushing, because it eliminates any chance whatsoever of moisture getting onto the surface of your model. And I took another quantum leap forward when I developed this technique associated with using super glue for all of my gluing and filling needs on seams. With that said, have a great evening. Don't forget to watch some of my tutorials on those two quantum leap forward techniques. Have a great evening once again, and of course, happy scale modeling.